is the next item on our news, which is when I saw this article, it kind of made my heart sink a lot. So, Lords of the Fallen. So it's a game that came out in 2014. Essentially, it's a Souls-like. It was probably the big first Souls clone that someone put out at the time, and it got mixed reception. But some people love it. I actually really very fond of the game. Deck 13, the devs went on to make the Surge and the Surge 2, which are some of my favorite games, and to me the best example of how you take the Souls formula and kind of make it your own. Unfortunately, the sequel, which so Lords of the Fallen 2, has actually moved on to its third developer now. So talk about troubled development. This game is living it. So essentially, Deck 13 themselves were working on it after the first game came out in 2014. Then they abandoned it the next year to work on the Surge and the sequel, obviously later. Then in 2018, the second studio took over, Defiant Studios. And then basically 2 years after that, now we're looking at a third developer studio named Hexworks, which is a new studio put together by the publisher, CI Games. They've taken it over. And when you think about a game that originally started development in 2015, but it's not of the level of, like, you talk about games that are in development for a long time and they've got people super looking forward to them, like Duke Nukem Forever and things. This game isn't like that, So it's really worrying, I think, that they're still trying to, salvage this. And Lords of Fallen did get buzz when it came out. It wasn't like it was a completely unknown game, but then, like Amalur, which we'll talk about later, which had a much bigger buzz than Lords of Fallen, that both of the games kind of just, like, they fell out of the general kind of consciousness, after they came out. And the fact that this is now being worked on by the third developer, it's kind of rough. Like, what state would that game be in at this point? So apparently it's now being set for next gen, as you'd imagine, and PC. And I hope it ends up being a thing, and because I've always looked forward to seeing what they could do with a sequel to Lords of the Fallen. But the fact that it's not by Deck 13 is, that obviously they haven't been working on it for a long time, makes me wonder, at this point, do you just try to create a new game as opposed to, just trying to tack onto this IP that just was meant to launch a franchise and never did. So it's a shame. But I hope something happens with it.
Yeah, it's never good when you're sort of changing developers. Like, even when you see significant staff turnover at a developer, like it's the same as Retro Studios with Metroid Prime 4. Like, that game, that really worries me, that game. And yeah, when you see that kind of development cycle, it's the same as Halo Infinite at the moment, right? Like, they've gotten some of the old hands from Halo to come back to try to, I don't know if you say rescue that game, but it's probably not in a great space, right? So
the reason why those games don't worry me at all is because they've got the backing of huge corporate entities behind them, and they're also very beloved IPs with rich histories. Lords of the Fallen doesn't have any of that stuff. It's a Eurojank action RPG that kind of that.
Did you say Eurojank?
Okay, so Eurojank. That's awesome. That's a new word awesome. For you, is it? Oh man, okay, all right. I actually have been thinking of doing a feature at some point about my favorite Eurojank.
You should. That's mad. I love that.
But the thing is, basically, all right. So Deck 13 have turnaround on that. My thoughts on that developer is just wild, because they put out a game called Venetica on 360, and I imagine it was on PS3 as well. That game's the buggiest piece of crap I've ever played in my life. It was so buggy that if you had to save in certain rooms in the game across this, and it was a pretty open world game, not huge. Otherwise, you risked characters just disappearing from the entire world, not coming back, including, and whether or not it was someone random or if it was
mad.
an entire quest person, main quest, and that happened to me. And it was a known problem. And then they turn around, they make Lords of the Fallen, then the Surge games, and they've just turned into a developer that I now have a lot of respect for. So it just goes to show that, it just takes a couple of great games for a developer to change your mind. So
Yeah, no, fair enough.